Now, onto something very different. Would you choose the sex of your baby if you had the chance? Well, it's already happening in Australia in the form of genetic screening in IVF. And one study says girls are the chosen ones.
To talk more about the broader issue of gender selection, we're joined by Professor Gab Kovacs, Director of Monash IVF, and Dr. Leslie Cannold, who's a consultant on gender ethics and technology. It is good to talk to you both. Good morning.
Good morning.
Firstly, let's go to you, Professor Kovacs. Now, girls, we know, are 4 times less likely to have autism, which is the reason that some parents are saying that they are opting for female embryos. Now, gender selection is banned in most Australian states, but how available is it within that realm of, say, genetic screening for conditions like autism?
Well, Monique, autism is an interesting condition because not a specific gene that's related to it that we have identified, and also it's not strictly just in one sex like haemophilia or Huntington's disease. But a couple who've had a child with autism, which is often a male, if they can have their next child gender selected so it's a female, then it's much less likely to have autism again. So under the Victorian law, it's quite legal and reasonable to do that, and couples have undergone gender selection for that reason.
Okay, so Professor Kovacs, based on that, there probably is an argument for allowing gender selection to happen more freely?
Look, there's no argument everywhere around, or most countries around the world will permit gender selection for medical reasons, when we can eliminate a medical condition by replacing embryos which are usually female. The controversy comes when we talk about gender selection for social reasons or family balancing, and many countries in the world have legislated against that, including the state of Victoria, and there are a few countries like US, Cyprus and Thailand when gender selection is performed for social reasons, and that's where Australian couples have been going to have gender selection performed. Yeah,
we know that quite a lot of couples are doing that, particularly in Thailand. Dr. Cannold, let's bring you in now. Talk us through some of the moral implications of gender selection. We've just heard the professor there saying that there are a lot of issues surrounding, if you like, social decisions and family balancing in gender selection. Talk us through some of those implications.
Well, that's right. I mean, to avoid disease conditions like haemophilia or even something like autism, there is general agreement because the technology was developed in order to assist people to avoid serious medical conditions. But where you get into the social issues, it becomes more controversial because it tends to pit our 2 moral values that we hold dear against each other. So on the one hand, we tend to think that reproductive decisions are private. It's nobody else's business if we have children, when we have children, how many children we have and what sort of children we have. But on the other hand, we understand that the decisions that we make, the collective consequences of lots of people making the same decision can affect us all. So for instance, if lots of individuals make decisions to have girls rather than boys or boys rather than girls, we could end up with a skewed gender ratio, and of course they've got that problem in places like India and China.
Probably the alarm bells for a lot of people start to ring on this because it feels like a road you start down and you can't stop. Dr. Cannold, do you see that gender selection as a step towards genetically engineered designer babies? Is that a possibility down the road?
I think that there's no question that we need to stay on the line of using the technology to avoid serious medical condition if we don't want to go down the path of saying, look, you know, the technology's there, we know whether it's going to be a boy or a girl if we do pre-implantation diagnosis. Some people prefer to have boys, you know, possibly because of very sexist ideas that, you know, dad can only play footy with a boy and mum can only go shopping with a girl, and we can do it, so why shouldn't we do it? So from my point of view, that really risks trivialising the technology, trivialising public support for it, research dollars, and so I think it's better that we stay clear, even though we can skirmish around the line of what constitutes a serious medical condition. We absolutely can have those skirmishes, but I think it's quite clear that when we get down to the other end of parental preference or building a better human being, that's where we probably should draw the line.
Professor Kovacs, we are running out of time, but just very quickly to you on this, on family balancing. A lot of people writing in on this saying you should just be happy with a healthy baby. It doesn't matter if it's a female or a male. But some of the research has shown that parents who feel as if their families are very skewed in one gender, they might have 3 boys or 3 girls, it's actually a very real emotion that they feel that they want one of the other sexes as well. Your comments on that?
Well, we've seen a number of couples who are desperate enough to want to have a child of a particular gender that they're prepared to, rather than conceive naturally, spend thousands of dollars and go overseas to have IVF treatment. And I think these couples are so determined that they will proceed with this sort of gender selection. I mean, interestingly, we've just done a survey through Morgan Gallup polls which show that 80% of the community is not comfortable with it, using gender selection socially. So I think it's probably the fear of the thin edge of the wedge, and I'm not sure it's totally logical.
Yeah, okay.
Professor Kovacs, thank you very much. Dr. Cannold, thank you as well.
Pleasure.
This morning. The interesting point is the thin edge of the wedge. Once it starts, you wonder
That's the
where
difficulty.
it stops. Yeah.
But I also, and you know, I agree with the people that are writing in and saying just be happy with having a boy or a girl. But I then also understand that for those people who feel that emotion very strongly, that they are just so desperate for either a girl or a boy, and they say, well, we've got this. We're just one couple, you know, and you've got the technology, that perhaps it's difficult for them to swallow, and that's why they are going to those countries where it is legal. Yep.